Myers, and I am on the board of Friends of New Deal Café Arts, who is the sponsor of this reception. And I'm really, really happy to introduce to you our artists for today. We're going to give opportunities for each of them to talk about their art, and if you have any questions that you would like some clarification on about the process or their motivation or any particular works that you want to ask about, feel free to ask them. Our artists today are Delia.
Mychajluk.
It was in my brain 5 minutes ago. Mychajluk and Maureen, and we are just so happy that they both could be here with us today to share about their art. So thank you very much. Delia, would you like to come up first? Great, thank you.
For those that don't know, this is my sister Maureen. We're less than 2 years apart.
Right.
And we grew up in a house where there was some art and stuff. So for this show, I decided to show primarily these canyon pieces that I've been working on for the last year or two, and decided to keep most things out. Of course, I had to put my dogs in here, but otherwise it's mostly canyon pieces. The large ones are oils. Some have steel wool or sand adding to the texture. And the squares are watercolor on canvas covered with cold wax for protection. And I think everyone who's an artist usually has a place, whether it's in their head or in nature or whatever, that's their heart place. And I have a couple places. Grand Canyon's one, Hemlock Forest in Shenandoah is another, and Cape Hatteras is probably my third. But I keep going back to those places for inspiration. And I think right now when we're talking a lot about climate change and this and that, and you go back to old days with Silent Spring, Rachel Carson, and all this stuff. Anyway, I choose at this point to show nature, to kind of remind people of what's out there and what we want to kind of try and preserve. And the canyon for me is a place where I feel eternity and timelessness. And so, anyone have any questions about my work? More than happy.
How long have you been doing your art?
Well, my background is actually, we did grow up with some art in the house. So we were drawing early. My mom did some art, and so we had art supplies around and that. And it was encouraged. And at one point she was teaching art to the neighborhood kids, and we were taking piano lessons in exchange, which neither one of us could play the piano. But I was working as a nurse in mental health for 40-something years, and that's what my original bachelor's and master's was in. But before that, I started taking art classes at night for a number of years, and then portfolioed into Corcoran and finished a bachelor's fine arts in 86, pregnant with my daughter. And so I've been making art continuously. I didn't show for a good number of years. It was a choice of making art or showing art. There just wasn't enough time between working full-time and kids and, all that. So.
Did you use art therapy? You said you have a bachelor's in mental health art as a therapeutic.
I actually did do some work. I co-led some art therapy sessions, actually at Prince George's Hospital, but this went back to the 70s. Okay, and then I worked on an inpatient unit for the treatment of schizophrenia, and I did art murals and art projects with some of the patients, particularly ones that had a hard time talking. But I tried to leave it alone at that time in terms of evaluating or assessing from a psychiatric point of view, and I wanted it to be a vehicle of expression. Give someone something to that was companionable and interactive with other people. So that's kind of my background.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm Maureen Wheatley. I'm Delia's older sister, and this is
never lets me forget it.
no, and this is the first time that in 20 years that we've had a show just the two of us together, which is really nice. She talked me into joining Hyattsville Community Artists Alliance, and I am part of that too. So sometimes I can get my stuff over to Franklin's and the Jewelers and PG County Community Center. I live on Kent Island, so that's a little distance to come over here, but I've been there for 30 years, and we were boaters over there for 10 years before that, before we moved there. So we've raised our kids on Kent Island, and first thing I was going to do when we moved there was to join the Kent Island Federation of Art. So I've been a member of that group for 30 years, and we're celebrating our 60th anniversary this year as a nonprofit organization, arts organization. I went to Catholic University with John right here, and I majored in art. It was a liberal arts degree, and any other schooling that I've done is seeing a lot of demos, taking some workshops from some wonderful Eastern Shore artists, and I've always been concerned about living there. You can't help but being concerned about climate change and everything else going on, but the relationship of wildlife with humans too. So you'll see with my herons and my fish and egret and all that, I try to show that coalition with them. I just, I work in all different mediums, and that kind of came about when I started teaching. I taught in the after-school programs. I've been a substitute teacher for many years in the school system, usually substituting for art teachers in long-term teaching. Also teaching from ages 3 all the way up to seniors. I was, probably 10 years ago, started teaching at the senior center, and then had to move my class to a studio where I actually rent a space to keep my artwork on Kent Island. And I work there part-time also, so that I can meet and greet people that come in, and I'm a big advocate for the artists in the community. I belong to the A&E Arts and Entertainment District too. We've been there as a district for 10 years. We're getting ready to reinstate, try to get it again for historic Stevensville. So it's just a different direction, but like Delia, I have no time to create, and you just find it wherever you can. At Kifa, we got a big endowment to build a clay center now, and they've made me the clay center manager, so I'm kind of overseeing the whole build, see when it could happen, but getting it through the county has been a real nightmare. It's, they're tightening up everything over there, and they're also short-handed, so things are just dragging their feet. So we're trying to start some clay classes somewhere, but one of my clay team members is a potter, and she'll probably let us fire our clay stuff in her kiln. So anyway, that's what we're hoping. And I did clay ceramics for 4 years at Catholic University. I lived in the I constantly skipped my other art classes to be in the ceramic part of it. So I always like to get my hands dirty, I guess. My pieces, you'll see, are of the nature as well. We both grew up with our parents walking trails with them and going out west and seeing all of God's glory in all the different parks and all that. And so it was, it just was a natural that we would be able to hang together and have that natural image, element. We both want to protect, but mine has a little bit more water in it because I live on an island. I live on Kent Island, so we are surrounded by water, and you can't get away from it. I've taken up plein air painting. The last couple of years, I belonged to Chesapeake Bay Plein Air Artists, and I did participate in the Quick Draw this year for Easton's paint plein air event, so that was a big deal for me. And sold my painting before it was even finished. I was smart enough to pick up somebody's house. I hate doing houses, or I shouldn't say hate, I just don't like them, but luckily they had lots of flowers in front of them, so I had something that I enjoyed painting there, and so that was really interesting. Yeah. So, I belong to also a working artists group or Forest Forum, which is in Easton, based in Easton as well, and also Ocean City and Rehoboth, and that gives me an excuse to go down to the beach. So tomorrow I have to go down and pick up a piece of art or 2 pieces at Ocean City and drop off 2 pieces.
I have a question for both of you. Have you two ever collaborated, considering that you work on similar types of themes?
No, we've shown together once before, actually on Kent Island, and but we haven't actually collaborated on an art piece.
Yeah. Well, someday.
Yeah.
I'll have to. It would be really interesting to try to do some. We're getting, I pick up stuff like the use of gauze, for instance, and different textures was influence from Delia, I think, for me to try something different. But I use pistachio nut shells, but the gauze too, I've been using them more as well, and I'm sure that was something that registered from seeing her using that. Just to take it beyond. I work in a lot of different mediums, and I made my senior project was fiber arts in college. So I go back to the fiber arts, and especially during the pandemic, I found it very soothing to be able to sit in front of the news. Just doing my weavings, and this is one of the little weaving that I did, and the one with the trees there. But so I go back to that too. I really like it, and I'd like to try to incorporate that some with the collages, maybe do a little bit more of that.
It's so nice to get stuff out of the studio and to see it. Sometimes, your studio's not too big, and to be able to see things from a distance, to see them in the same room, it's very nice. And support of fellow artists, art enthusiasts is just vital.
Thank you so much again for coming out.
And thanks for the new Deal sponsoring.
Yes, definitely.
Just really appreciate the opportunity. It's nice to have a place local. For me, it's 20 minutes away, so no big deal.
Yeah.
So it's great.
Are there any more questions for either of the artists?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
You're both extremely talented, and you work in different areas. Do you have a favorite medium that's your go-to, and what do you find what medium is most challenging for you to work with?
For me, my favorite for painting is oil painting. But since the pandemic, I started the wood carving and hadn't carved in 30-something years before the pandemic. And so the wood carving is something else that I'm enjoying. But my go-to seems to be the oil painting.
When I'm plein air painting, I try to find flowers, no matter where they are, and that's what I like to, if I get stumped on trying to find something to do, it's either trees or flowers that I like to paint. And the challenges would be to do buildings, but it's almost like I do a lot of commission work of buildings, boats, cars and stuff, and houses. And as long as they're old and classic, I love doing them. But if they give me a brand new car, I just can't get it emotionally attached to it. I do pet portraits as well, too, and I enjoy doing animals. I guess I've done animals since I was a little kid. I mean, that's always come easiest for me. But I do commission work for the animals, but I don't usually do as many for shows than I used to.
Do you get nervous when you do commissions?
Not really. Well, it's funny. It depends. I got a commission the other day. A guy came in with was oval frame with it was an antique frame, and he said it had bubble kind of glass, curved glass on it. And he said, I paid $5 at an antique auction. He said, could you do a picture before Christmas for me? And I said, what would you like? And he had bought some of my fish collages before, the fish that are up front with the collages. And so I said, did you want fish in it, or what do you want me to do? Because he had talked about a big piece in his house. And this was just, this big. And he said, well, I was thinking the fish collage at the bottom, and then I have a boat coming at you at the top of the picture. So I thought, but I saw it right away. I saw it right away. I said, so it's going to be a skipjack, right? And it's going to be a big sail and all that. And he said, that would be perfect. So that one worked right away, but you never know. And I could never have done a modern boat in an old antique frame. I mean, you just don't, you don't think that way, I guess. But, it really is nice when I can do a pet portrait for somebody who I know has a dog that's been ailing, and that happened recently, and then the dog did pass on. But the woman had said she was so glad that she still had that picture, that she had me do painting of him. And so, those kind of things I really enjoy doing for other people, because it means so much to them. And then we have an ice cream shop in historic Stevensville, and I did a mural on either side of the doorway to the ice cream shop. It's called Tasty Toucan. But what I envisioned when I did that, because I got a grant for it, was to have a toucan there to where kids can go up to the toucan like they're holding it and do selfies by the front door. And so then I got carried away and put all kinds of hidden creatures in the the rainforest type vegetation. And so that was kind of cool. And I put our own terrapin turtles for historic Stevensville, and then also the little green frogs and stuff like that from the rainforest. So this week I painted more, or I would say last week when I was trying to get these 2 panels done for this gentleman, that I worked on that quicker. It just depends on how, if I think my paintings for a long time. Sometimes I wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning with a solution or what I want to do next. And just trying to find the time, it isn't always there. And when you do have the time, you can end up with, I have a mermaid chair sitting in my family room for the last 6 months that all I have to do is paint the scales on the body and then it would be done. But I just can't, I can't motivate myself to doing that. And I had to carve her head, and stick a head on the back of the chair so that it looks like you're sitting, in her lap with the head coming up. I'm looking at it as being a piece that will be outside the shop where kids can sit in the mermaid chair, or something like that. Just something funky and different in recycling. I do like to do a lot of recycling art too. As you can see with the pistachio nut shells and things like that. I've done several pictures using them. I have buckets of pistachio nut shells. They're hard as wood. I mean, they're so hard, and they hold up. Unless you drop the thing on the floor, it's they don't break. So
Nowadays, I aim to go into the studio. I aim to go in 5 days a week. There are days when I'll go in and I'll sit and read. And then there's days where maybe I'll work hard for a couple hours. I find that most of the time with the oils, I can paint for 2 or 3 hours. If I'm into it, no breaks, fine. But it does vary. But I was so ingrained with going to work every day for 40-odd years that I'm used to going to work. So I try to get in at a certain time, and I have found myself over the last couple of years where I used to get in like sometimes even 8 o'clock in the morning. I said, now, if I get in at 10:30, that's fine. I usually leave 3 or 3:30 unless I'm working on something specific. I'll beat the traffic home.
I like to be challenged. That's the big thing for me, and I love when a show has a theme. I think that's why I like to go to Ocean City, because they always have a theme every month. And
people will ask me, what's the theme for Franklin's show, or this or that? I don't know.
Right.
We do have them.
Right, yeah, we do.
I
I know. And I've been also struggling with portraits, because I want to try to put some people in my landscapes now. And so that's been a struggle for me, and I do go into, when I have the time, to go into a studio that has a live model or work on that, try to get some people done. And I've been working on portraits of family too, members, so that's been a challenge, definitely a challenge, but because I've always taught how to do a face, to kids and adults. And I've been lucky enough through the pandemic, and still doing it now, is teaching some both adults and children that are have some emotional or mental issues, having them in my class on Wednesday mornings. So they're on scholarship. I've been able to get scholarships for them through KIFA, which is really nice that we're offering it to them, because some of these people really need it. And we were mentoring a couple high school kids during the pandemic who couldn't go to school, who were, in advanced classes before everything shut down, and, they were looking at college, and they needed to have stuff for their portfolio and to learn new material, new mediums to work with. So we were doing acrylic pour on their notebooks and fun things like that, painting canvases for their floor mats for their bedroom and that kind of thing. So it was fun. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm Meg Haney, and I'm the president of FONCA. And I just wanted to say thank you on behalf of FONCA for coming out today, and thank you to our great artists today. The show was beautiful. So